Hello everyone, I'm Jacob Kauf and I'm the nerd on the street, and today we are installing Collabora Online on a Nextcloud server. Okay everyone, so a couple weeks ago I made a video about installing Nextcloud on a DigitalOcean droplet, and I see Nextcloud as a great alternative to Google Drive because you can upload your files to a cloud server, but you can be in control of the cloud server. It's running open source software, and you can control the server. Rather than uploading things to Google Drive, Google controls the server and they have access to all your stuff. However, one of the biggest features of Google Drive is Google Docs, the ability to edit Office documents in the cloud from your web browser, and the ability to edit collaboratively with other people in particular is one of the huge advantages that Google Drive has over Microsoft Office or LibreOffice. Now, a long time ago, Nextcloud and OwnCloud had their own document editor included in them, but in recent releases, Nextcloud has ditched their native document editor. They didn't have enough development effort going towards it. It was not a good experience, so they just basically dropped it. And Nextcloud themselves are focusing on the file storage aspect along with other things, like calendars, their mail client, their chat clients, all that. However, you can still put a web browser-based document editor on your Nextcloud server, and you can do that using Collabora Online. Now, basically, the LibreOffice project has been working on a web browser-based version of LibreOffice for quite a while now, but the code is not ready for end users to use yet. It is still very much early alpha build type stuff, and LibreOffice doesn't even really release any binaries for that. It's just code that's floating around out there and they're working on it. But Collabora is a company that takes LibreOffice's code, and they're taking that LibreOffice web code and making it into a usable product which they call Collabora Online. Like I said, Collabora is a company and they do charge if you want support, just like Nextcloud charges if you want professional support from them. But just like Nextcloud, you can install Collabora on your server for you to maintain yourself without paying anyone because it's free and open source software. So the version that we will be installing today is Collabora Online Development Edition. The acronym for that is CODE. I'm not going to use the acronym because that gets confusing because we're not actually dealing with code. One thing I will say before we start is that the development edition of Collabora Online has a couple restrictions in place: the number of documents you can have open at the same time, the number of users that can be connected at the same time, that kind of thing. Now, like I said, this is freedom respecting and open source software, so the code is there if you want to make your own custom version of Collabora Online Development Edition without those restrictions in place. However, the binaries that they release, which is what we're going to be using, those builds in particular are what have those restrictions in place. And one more thing, we are going to be using Docker for this setup. Now, I am not a fan of Docker at all. Docker is a containerization tool, and you'll see it in a moment because we're going to use it. It's actually, in theory, quite simple to use, but like so many other things, such as snap packages, which I went out of my way in my last video to not use snap packages, Docker images are another one of those things that makes things simpler for developers, but it makes them harder for system administrators and usually harder for end users as well. Since the people developing the code get to pick what platform it's on, of course, they're going to pick what's most convenient for them, which is Docker. Collabora Online is extremely touchy software is what this boils down to. The Docker setup needs to be done in a very specific way in order for this to work. It took me quite a while to get it working the first time. Several days of troubleshooting and whatnot. And that's why I'm making this video, so that you guys can, watch and follow along if you want this. But I did want to let you all know you got to be careful when you're doing this stuff, and that's why I'm using Docker for this. Because with Nextcloud, it was very easy to set up our manual Nextcloud server as opposed to using a snap package. We took a little bit more time out of our day to do all the setup, but it was still very easy to do. Collabora Online is such a touchy piece of software that if everything is not exactly perfect, it's not going to work. So it's really not worth, for me, trying to set this up manually. That's why I'm just doing Docker. This is how I would do it in a production setup. In fact, I did this already for one client, so this is what I would recommend. But that's enough talking. Without further ado, let's get to the desktop and let's set this thing up. Okay, everyone, and here we are on the desktop. So you can see here I'm in my DigitalOcean control panel. like I said in my last video, it really doesn't matter what host you're using. I'm just using DigitalOcean because it's convenient for me right now. I'm going to go ahead and power up this server, and I am going to destroy this droplet, basically just trash this server right after this video is done. That way I don't have to worry too much about you guys guessing passwords or getting into my Nextcloud server that I have set up here. But I am going to go ahead and open up a terminal. We are going to SSH into this server once it gets done powering up. To check if it's powered up, we can also access the Nextcloud installation that we performed in my last video by going to example1.nerdonthestreet.com, which was the URL that I used. Alright, and looks like the server is up, and I was logged into example1.nerdonthestreet.com. So this is Nextcloud, and this is what I was talking about. If we go into our documents folder here, you can see there's an about.odt file. If I click on that, it just tries to download it. And I can either download it and, save it to my downloads folder, or I can open it with LibreOffice Writer, which is, perfectly fine to do. And now I can read this document. I'll go ahead and resize LibreOffice Writer here. But this default setup requires you, if you want to edit a document that's in your Nextcloud server, you have to download the document, save it, edit it, click edit document here to unlock the editing, and we can make changes. But at this point we would have to save this, and it's going to open up my save as dialog because I opened it straight from the browser. But I would have to save it, drag it back into Nextcloud, and upload it again to edit that document here. A text document, on the other hand, we can open up and edit right here in Nextcloud. As you can see, I'm editing this, and if I exit out of that and reopen it, the change I made is there. So simple text documents work. But what if you want full-featured documents in LibreOffice with formatting? You've got your bold, italics, underline, strike through, you've got fonts, you've got font sizes, justifications, alignments, all that stuff, spacing. We want an actual document editor in our web browser so that we can access things from anywhere and edit them from anywhere. So how can we do that? Well, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and SSH into the IP address here, and if I can remember the password I used, there we go, okay. So we are in our Ubuntu server. The first thing I'm going to do is a sudo apt update and an upgrade, because it's always good to start off. Yep, we got 5 packages can be upgraded. So it's always good to just have the latest versions of everything when we are about to mess with your server. We're going to be looking at documentation and whatnot, so we want to be up to date everywhere. Okay, and that's finished updating. Now the first thing we're going to do to install Collabora Online is install Docker. Now what we're going to be installing is actually called Docker CE, that stands for Community Edition, as opposed to the Docker Enterprise Edition that you would have to pay for. That does not mean Community Edition is not suitable for use in an enterprise, it just means you're not getting enterprise support with it, you're supporting it yourself, or your enterprise is supporting it itself. So right now we could actually do a sudo apt install docker.io, and it would find docker.io in the Ubuntu repository, and it would install a version of Docker for us. However, we're actually not going to do that because Docker does maintain their own repository for Ubuntu. If you're on a distribution like Arch, which is rolling release, I would just suggest getting it straight from your distribution's repositories. But since we're using Ubuntu, which puts those freezes on its packages every 6 months and doesn't update your packages again for another 2 years with the LTS versions. They only give you security updates, they don't give you feature updates. If you're using Ubuntu, for this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use the Docker official PPA. That way, whenever Docker pushes an update that they want you to get, you're going to get the update. You should be aware that this is kind of circumventing Ubuntu's repository system that's in place. You can really do it either way, we're just going to do it like this for the video. So the first thing they show you how to do is remove old versions of Docker, quote unquote old versions, including docker.io, which is the program I was just about to install. Notice that they're using apt-get statements instead of apt. That's something that we're going to not follow because we're using apt in this video because we've got a new version of Ubuntu. But just to demonstrate that Docker is not currently installed, we'll do sudo apt remove docker, docker engine, and docker.io, and it should report, yep, none of these are installed. So we'll clear our screen again. And Docker serves their repository over HTTPS, which is a good thing because it's secure. So we're going to install a couple of packages to enable apt to use HTTPS. That's apt transport HTTPS, Ssl certificates, and curl, which I would think we already have, but we got software properties common as well. So install those 4 packages. And yep, curl we already did have, as well as CA certificates we probably installed with Let's Encrypt last video. And now we can add Docker's official GPG key to our system with curl. So this command is coming straight from the Docker documentation, and what it's going to do is download Docker's GPG key here, and then it's going to do sudo apt key add with the key that it just downloaded. This right here is a pipe. That means that it's piping in the curl output into the next command. So we'll run this, and it reports OK. Next, we will add the repository, and to avoid having to type that in on video, I'll just once again copy paste it from that documentation. It's going to be a sudo add apt repository, the name of the repository. We're doing the stable version, so we will run that. And from now on, any time that we do an apt update, it's going to check this repository in addition to the Ubuntu repositories, or the DigitalOcean ones we had by default. So we'll do a sudo apt update just to demonstrate that. You can see it checks Ubuntu's security repository as well as the DigitalOcean mirrors we have for the other ones, and then it does check the download.docker.com repository. So now that we've done an apt update, we can go ahead and do a sudo apt install docker CE, which will install Docker Community Edition from that repository, as well as some prerequisites it needs, which could be coming from Docker's repository or Ubuntu's. We're just going to accept everything, hit enter, and we'll download all of that, and it's finished installing. So at this point, we can run systemctl status docker to see that Docker is indeed installed and started. We'll quit that, and we are going to clear our screen again. Now at this point, before we go any further with installing Collabora, just right before we do the actual installation with Docker, we are going to set up another subdomain here that we're going to use in a little while. Right now, like I said, we've got our Nextcloud server at example1.nerdonthestreet.com. You actually do need a separate subdomain to put Collabora Online on, and here's why. Right now in Nextcloud, let's go ahead and do a step we're gonna have to do later anyway. Let's go to apps in Nextcloud, and we're going to go to Office and Text down here, and Collabora Online. It's an app right here. It's an official app with Nextcloud. The Nextcloud developers develop this integration app. So we'll click download and enable here. We'll need to put in our password. And that has been installed. You can see it's gone over here, and we've got a disable button now. Now this did not actually install Collabora. This is just the piece that integrates Collabora with Nextcloud. That's what we just installed. So if we go to our settings center now, we've got a new section under administration called Collabora Online, and there's a place where we can put our Collabora Online server. So we're going to need to put a domain here, and that's the domain that we need to set up right now. So for my example, I used example1.nerdonthestreet.com for Nextcloud, and then for Collabora, I'm going to use example2.nerdonthestreet.com. For you, you might have had Nextcloud at cloud.nerdonthestreet.com or drive.nerdonthestreet.com, and then I might put Collabora at edit.nerdonthestreet.com or just collabora.nerdonthestreet.com. Now it's important to know you're never going to have to actually type this in. If you're just using Collabora through Nextcloud, you can make this just a bunch of gibberish whatever your domain is.com, and that's perfectly fine because the user never has to type it in. The only place we need it is right here to set our server in Nextcloud settings. So to do this, I'm going to go to Hover, which is my domain name registrar. I talked a little bit about domain name registrars in my last video about installing Nextcloud. So once again, just like I did in that last video, I'll go to nerdonthestreet.com. I'm making a new DNS entry. This will look different depending on what registrar you're using, but you need to create an A record, and it's going to be, for me, example2, and then the IP address is going to be the exact same IP address. If we come back here and copy it again just to make sure, there we go, and we will click add record. So now example 2 points to the same server that example 1 points to. Since it's set up this way, it's perfectly possible to have Nextcloud on one server and Collabora hosted on another server. You can use one Collabora Online server with multiple Nextcloud servers. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with the domain setup. So this is just the simple way that we're doing it for this video. We're done with Hover now, and we'll leave Nextcloud's settings open here, but we will need to come back to our terminal. And now we can go ahead and install Collabora. So to do this, we're going to use Docker. That's why we installed Docker before. So to install Collabora, I'll give Docker one thing. It tries to make installing things really, really easy because everything's in the container, so all we have to do is pull the container down. So for that, we're going to type in docker pull Collabora, and then /code. So Collabora is sort of the Docker repository here, if you will, and then code is the program that we're installing because, like I explained before, we're using Collabora Online Development Edition or code. So we'll hit enter here, and it's going to download all of the requirements for Collabora, downloading the application itself. Okay, and we've got this status message, downloaded image for Collabora/code latest. We downloaded the latest version. That's exactly what we want. Now this is where things get really touchy, and I apologize if I make a mistake here and I have to troubleshoot. I'll get it all on video here. We've only been screen recording for about 20 minutes, so we're doing pretty good in this video lengthwise. We have a little bit of room for error here. But here's what we're gonna do. We're going to run the Docker image right now. And basically, part of the reason I don't like Docker is because it's kind of like starting up an entire virtual machine just to run a program. It's not actually starting up the entire machine, it's not running a kernel, but there's a lot of overhead going on here that's within this image we're about to start up, and you'll see what I mean when we get into it. But we're going to go ahead and start the Docker image, which is going to start the program within the image automatically. So for that, we're going to type docker run -t -d -p 127.0.0.1:9980:9980. This is a loopback address. This is setting the port for Collabora. And we're going to do -e, and then in a single quote, we're going to type domain equals example1 dot, actually we need 2 backslashes to escape the dot, nerd on the street, 2 backslashes .com, and then another single quote. So here's what's going on right here. This is setting the domain name of our Nextcloud server. This is another part that you can get caught up on, and if you mess this up and get confused, it's going to take you a while to figure it out. Example1.nerdonthestreet.com is the Nextcloud server. Example2.nerdonthestreet.com we dedicated to our Collabora server. We are starting Collabora here, but this flag that we're passing in, or this expression with this domain name, this is pointing Collabora to our Nextcloud server. So this needs to be the Nextcloud server, what you actually type into your browser, not what we're putting into here later. Those are 2 separate URLs. So this is your Nextcloud server, example1.nerdonthestreet.com. The double backslashes is because this is a regular expression. So the backslash character is used for escaping characters from being interpreted in certain ways by different languages and programs. We need this slash to keep this period in place, because otherwise it will think that this is, you know, a placeholder for something else, but we literally just want a period because it's a domain name. The reason there's 2 backslashes is because if we just put 1 backslash, our Linux terminal, bash, that we're running here is going to think that that's an escape character for it. So this is escaping this backslash, and then that backslash is escaping the period, and same down here. So that's our domain name we're setting. This is not the end of the line yet. We still need -- restart always, and that will set it so that if your Collabora server crashes for some reason, it will restart. --cap -add make node Collabora/code. And this is referencing just the same thing we typed up here, the image. All right, so at this point we're going to run this, and let's see what it does. All right, we just get this long string of output, I love Docker. Okay. Now at this point, we need to set up Apache to point example2.nerdonthestreet.com to this server that we just started locally on this IP address. As of right now, Collabora has no idea. Actually, Collabora will have no idea what its domain name is. It doesn't care what its domain name is, but we need Apache to point Nextcloud to Collabora when we type the domain name in there later. So for this, we've already got Apache installed because we're running Nextcloud on it. We're going to type a2inmod proxy, that's enabling the Apache proxy module, a2inmod proxy _ws tunnel, a2inmod proxy _http, and a2inmod SSL we should already have enabled. All right, so we've done all of that, and now we're going to create a virtual host. We're going to create that virtual host by going to, let's do nano, etc, Apache 2, sites, available, and let's just make a new one called Collabora1.com. config. I'm making it called Collabora 1 just in case I mess this up and have to do another one. All right, now at this point, I'm doing a whole lot of cheating this video because once again, I'm reading from documentation. This is actually the Nextcloud documentation on how to get Collabora up and running, and they've got a sample virtual host you can use, which we're going to use as well. So we're going to copy this sample virtual host off camera, copy, then we're going to come in here and paste it, and we've got this entire text file full of stuff. Now, right now, first thing you need to do is set your server name to your actual domain name, which is going to be example2.nerdonthestreet.com. So this is going to be the Collabora domain because you're telling Apache what is going to resolve to Collabora. You can leave the 443 because that's the port that HTTPS uses. And at this point, we need to run Let's Encrypt to grab a certificate. Now, just in case you're thinking about cheating here, let me inform you. You might be thinking, oh, Nextcloud is running on the same server as Collabora, right? These are both running on my one DigitalOcean droplet. So when my Nextcloud server communicates with the Collabora server, obviously it's going to have to go out to its domain name service and resolve my domain name once, and then it'll see that it's its own IP address. So after that happens, shouldn't Nextcloud and Collabora just be communicating with themselves? And, you know, none of that communication is going to be going over the internet. It's all happening locally on the Linux machine. So you might be thinking, well, why don't we just skip HTTPS? Why don't we skip SSL here? We don't really need to encrypt traffic between a server and itself, because even though it's two different applications, it's not actually going off the box. It's not going onto any wires controlled by anyone else, so it's not like anyone can just tap it. You know, they'd have to get into the server first, and if they do that, the SSL is irrelevant anyway. So why don't we just set up HTTP for our Collabora server and just type in an HTTP address here? Well, here's why. Because if we type in http://example2.nerdonthestreet.com and we try and click apply here, saved with error, Collabora Online should use the same protocol as the server installation. Now, if we refresh this settings panel, it's going to save that, but it's not going to work. Take my word for it, it's not going to work. If your Nextcloud was on HTTP, which would be a terrible idea because then none of your documents are getting encrypted when you access them, then you could use HTTP for Collabora. But if your Nextcloud is using HTTPS, which it should be, Collabora is only going to work if you set this Collabora Online server option also to HTTPS. So at this point we can click apply and it's saved. Of course, it's not actually working yet because we haven't started this Apache site yet. It's not running. You can see here we've got places for Ssl Certificate File, Chain File, and Key File. Now in the last video when we set up Let's Encrypt, I'm pretty sure we used Let's Encrypt's Apache plugin, or we used Certbot's Apache plugin, which set up Apache for us and added the necessary lines to our configuration file. That's not going to work here because we've got a virtual host that's already set up for SSL. Rather than going through all the effort of acting like we're going to do a port 80 virtual host and then letting Let's Encrypt forward from 80 to 443 for us, which I'm not even sure if that would work anyway. Rather than doing all of that, we're just going to run certbot in manual mode, and we're going to generate these 3 files. I know this is a lot more work than just letting certbot do everything for you, but trust me, it's not that hard. It'll be fine. What we're going to do is we're going to run certbot, cert only, and this is saying that we're not worrying about the plugin, we're just generating the certificate, and then we'll tell it the domain we want is example2.nerdonthestreet.com. We'll run that, and it's going to ask how we want to authenticate. We're going to do Apache because Apache is already running. Now, standalone would just create a web server for the 2 seconds it takes to prove that we own example2.nerdonthestreet.com, and then it would take it right down. That would be great, but since we're already running Apache and Apache has binded port 80 on our system, certbot's not going to be able to bind port 80 as well, so we need to just use Apache that we're already running, all right? And it went ahead and used Apache, so even though we didn't have to set up a site in Apache with example2.nerdonthestreet.com yet, at port 80, it was still able to go ahead and use Apache, which we were already running, to prove that we own example2.nerdonthestreet.com. And now you can see we've got this message, and we always get this message. We just normally are able to safely ignore it, but this time it's important. Your certificate and chain have been saved at Etsy Let's Encrypt Live example2.nerdonthestreet.com/fullchain.pim, privekey.pim, and let's go ahead and let's just ls this entire directory. Let's Encrypt live example2.nerdonthestreet.com. And you can see we've got 4 files here: cert1, chain1, full chain1, and private key. So this is the private key. This is your public key, basically. And then the full chain is your public key plus some other stuff that tells people that it's actually valid as an SSL certificate, that it's been validated by an SSL certificate authority. Now you can see these are actually symbolic links to some other locations on our system. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to copy this directory, and I'm going to paste it into a text editor off screen here just for my ease, along with these 4 file names. And now we're going to head right back into Apache's config. If we go back up to our nano, into that sites available /collabora1.config. Now if we come down to SSL certificate file, that certificate file is going to be etc let's encrypt live example2.nerdonthestreet.com/cert1.pim. The certificate chain file is going to be etc let's encrypt live example2.nerdonthestreet.com/ we're going to use the full chain1.pim file. And then the SSL certificate key file is going to be etc let's encrypt live example2.nerdonthestreet.com /privkey.pim. Once again, our private key for the certificate. All right, so at this point, we're going to save this configuration, enter, and we'll go ahead and clear our screen. So now if we do an ls at etc apache2 sites available, we see we've got collabora1.config is available. We'll go ahead and enable it with a2 in site collabora1, and then systemctl reload apache2. Okay, looks like that failed, so let's take a look at what our error message is. Systemctl status apache2.service. I made a typo. This was not supposed to be cert1.pim, this was supposed to be cert.pim. Alrighty, so we'll just head back into our config file, and we'll go ahead and fix that. Save. Okay. So now let's go ahead and systemctl restart apache2, and yeah, I'll bet. Let me go back into this file once again. All right, so none of these are supposed to have numbers after them. The reason I just made that mistake was because if you take a look at what I wrote down here, when I copied and pasted that ls output, the actual files themselves that the links are pointing to are cert1, chain1, full chain1, but the symbolic links that I am typing in here do not have numbers after them. That's why I got confused. Once again, my mistake. We'll go ahead and restart this again. Okay, and now it works. Okay, so at this point, let's go ahead and go to our Nextcloud settings. And first of all, we can try going to example2.nerdonthestreet.com just to see what happens here. You can see it just redirects to our Nextcloud page, warns us that we're accessing through a domain that's not the domain we've set up for Nextcloud, because that was example1.nerdonthestreet.com. However, if we come back over to our Collabora Online settings panel here within Nextcloud and we once again apply this, it's applied. Let's head on over to our files and see if it's working or not. All right, let's go into our documents and let's try opening this about.odt again. So you can see we've got the loading bar there, so it's trying to load up Collabora. Okay, and it works. All right, that was relatively smooth, guys. And it is going to take a second to load. It's basically loading LibreOffice into my web browser right now, so it is going to take a second. It doesn't look that bad every time it loads. Once it's done here, we can exit out of here. I think that might be my Wi-Fi actually that made it load so slowly as well. If we load it up again, you can see it connecting. Okay, took a second again that time, but now it's open and we've got a document. We can exit out of here and we can create a new document. If we just come up here and click new document, test text document.odt, and if we click on that, it loads up Collabora. Okay, and now we're just getting a spinning circle. Let me see here. If we open up our terminal and run the command docker logs, it's possible for us to see the Collabora logs. We can't just view them in a text file because it's within the Docker container. Now if we run docker list, no, docker ps, Okay, so run docker ps to get your container ID, copy that. This is how easy Docker is to use, and then run docker logs with that ID, and now we can see the logs here. And we've got lots of errors here toward the end of our file, as is to be expected, because this is not working anymore. You guys saw me load up the one document about.odt. That's not going to work anymore either. It was working for literally about 30 seconds, and then it stopped. I'm really not a fan of Collabora. It's so freaking hard to get working, largely because it's in Docker. All right, well, let's do this. Let's just try, let's run docker ps. Let's run systemctl restart docker, because that's going to restart Docker, and it's going to restart all the containers as well. Okay, so Docker has been restarted. Let's refresh Nextcloud here, and let's once again go into text-document.odt, see if that loads up this time. Docker ps, docker logs, failed to create a kit process. Okay. And you know what I just realized in this error message? This says fork failed because it cannot allocate memory. If I run free right now, free-h, all right, we've got 985 megabytes of memory total. Well, it says we have 321 megabytes free, 371 used. I'm just gonna try something real quick. I'm gonna make a swap file and turn it on, just because if this error message was coming up because we don't have enough RAM on our server, I don't wanna be troubleshooting something when it's just not having enough RAM. So here's how to make a swap file, if you've never done this. We've got dd if dev 0, so we're copying from nothing to /swap file, block size 1024, count equals, we're going to make a 2 gigabyte swap file, which is going to be 2097152 blocks. You probably don't need a 2 gigabyte swap file on your server. I'm just making it that big so that I know that's not the problem here. Okay, and then we will format that file as a swap file with make swap. Okay, chmod 0600 swap file, and then swap on swap file. All right, so now if we run free-h, you can see we've got 2 gigabytes of swap memory there. We're going to systemctl restart Docker one more time. Okay, and let's refresh this and see if it works now, or if this video is going to be a little bit longer. Let's try opening about.odt again. Okay, well that loads right up. Okay, that was actually pretty quick. So now we can close this, come back into text-document.odt, the blank one. Okay, now it loads. So it was literally just we didn't have enough RAM on our server. The client server that I have this on has a few gigs of RAM in it. You know, this was just the absolute cheapest DigitalOcean server we were using for this tutorial. So make sure that you do have some free RAM, and if you don't have free RAM, make a swap file so that things don't crash when you run out of RAM. But now we can go ahead and, just like LibreOffice, because this, like I said, this is all built on LibreOffice. That's why actually if we go and run docker logs again, you can see some of these log things say LOO LWSD. That LOO stands for LibreOffice Online. I'm gonna stop this output because that's a lot of stuff coming, but even the Collabora code has references to LibreOffice Online, so it really is based on that. Same over here, low leaf, this is LibreOffice Online stuff going on. So we will clear our terminal again. We can actually exit the terminal, because at this point our video is over, because like I said, now we can come in here and we can set a title of document, and now it feels like I'm remaking my video I did a while back on my introduction to LibreOffice Writer. We can have description here. We can make a heading 1, text here, another heading 1, text here, heading 2, more text here. So this looks way nicer than just a text document would be. And in fact, I can open it up in another window here. and we can see if we have our collaborative editing going on or not. If we open this up, yeah, so now you can see we've got this open in 2 browser windows at once. Obviously, if you're using this in the real world, it's going to be more than one user at the same time. It's not just going to be the same person on it twice like I am right now. But you can see I'm making changes now. Hello. And it's just like Google Docs. It's a little bit slower than Google Docs. Just like I said, because of my limited resources here. But it's just like Google Docs, except it's better because it's open source and freedom respecting. All right. And the dictionary is getting a little wonky there. It looks like we're typing in German here. We can actually, I know how to fix that too. If we SSH right back into our server that I just X'd out of. Clear that. So we can actually set the language as one of the options when we start the Docker container. Now here's how crappy Docker is we can't actually change an option unless we remove the container and then download it again. So we're going to run docker ps, and there's our container ID. Okay, so we'll copy that. We're gonna run docker rm container ID. You cannot remove a running container, so docker stop container ID. Okay, it stopped. You can see we were disconnected up there because we just stopped our Collabro server. So now we'll run docker rm. We are removing the Collabro server. Now we're going to cat out our .bash _ history and grep for example2. And let's see here. Oh, actually it's example1 we're grepping for. There we go. So here's our Docker command that we ran before. So we're going to run the same command again. Only this time, right after this expression that set our domain, we're going to run another expression, and we're going to set it so that our dictionary equals English, and only English. Okay, so we'll run that, and it's going to create a new Docker container and run it. So if we do docker ps, it should be running. Okay, so now let's go ahead and reload these. And let's go into our file we were editing, which was textdocument.odt. And hopefully, the language will be set properly this time. Okay, here we go. So now, well, it still thinks this is in German, because now we can type anything and it's not gonna... Why does it think we're in Germany? Do we have our server, our Nextcloud server set to Germany or something? Language is English US, locale is United States. Let's try making another new document. New document.odt. Load that up in Collabora. And it still thinks we're in German. Alright, that's actually a problem not even with Collabora, that's a problem with Nextcloud. If we look at var www html core templates, file templates, you can see we've got our ODP, ODS, and ODT templates here, and these are actually LibreOffice documents with their languages set to German because Nextcloud was created in Germany. So every single document you create with Nextcloud is going to, by default, think it's in Germany. So we're going to go ahead and open up Dolphin here on my system, and we're just going to SFTP into our server. 189.199.243. I could have stopped this video a long time ago, but I'm trying to go all the way to have this set up the way you guys are actually going to want it set up. So root and password. Okay, so we need to go to the root of our file system and var www html core, nope, not config, core templates, file templates. Okay, so here are the files. So I'm just going to open them up on LibreOffice on my system. This is the easiest way to do this according to the internet. As you can see, even my LibreOffice thinks that this is in Germany. So we're going to change it to English USA and save it. And Dolphin's going to ask us, do you want to upload the changes? Yes. And we will overwrite the existing file. Okay. We'll do the same thing with the spreadsheet. That just opened up on my other screen. Drag this over here, changing it from German to English. Save, upload. If you're not using Dolphin, just use any SFTP client. You just need to change the locale of these 3 files. That's all that needs to happen here. And here's our Impress document, and we will change it from German to English. Save, upload, overwrite. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Close document. Okay. So we're going to delete these test documents. Delete. Okay. And let's make one more new text document. Last1.odt. And that's going to be created here. We'll click on it. Okay, and Collabora knows it's in English. You can see down here it says English USA. So hello, my name is, these are all words that are valid. ASDF is not valid, so it gets underlined. Thank goodness. Okay, so we've got collaborative editing. We've got working dictionaries. You saw the styles earlier. We can, set it to any fonts that we have installed here, and we've got a few different ones installed, different stuff that looks, different from each other. Now we're going to come back out here, and finally, I just want to show you that this is not just for text documents. Collabora also works with spreadsheets. We'll make a new spreadsheet and go in there. And you can see it's got the correct language of English since we modified that template as well. But you can use LibreOffice Calc within your web browser now. Sum A1 plus A2. Okay. And we have working calculations in a spreadsheet. We can close this and we can make a new presentation. Click on that. And it's a new LibreOffice Impress document. And you can even give that presentation in your browser. That just went full screen on my entire computer, which is exactly what you would want if you were actually giving a presentation. So this is, at this point, it took a whole lot of setup, but this is now a true replacement for Google Docs. Not just Google Drive, but the actual document editing as well. So that took a very, very long time to do, obviously. This video is probably going to be around an hour long, which is longer for my videos these days because I've been trying to keep them shorter. I know this video probably was not as easy to watch as my Nextcloud installation video, and I apologize for that, but like I said, Collabora is a very touchy piece of software. It's running in Docker, which is a black box in itself for me, and there are a lot of little hang-ups you can get caught on, as you saw there toward the end. Is this easy enough for every user to set up for themselves? No, absolutely not. But if you are a server administrator, setting this up for somebody else, it is more than possible to do. So I hope this video was helpful to somebody out there. If you have questions about this process, I will hesitantly say leave them in the comments down below or on the forums at nerdonthestreet.com. However, like I said, because this is so touchy, I can probably help figure things out for you, but I'm just going to be Googling any problems you give me here. So you're better off just going and looking things up yourself, honestly, if you have problems with this one. And maybe go and ask the Nextcloud and or Collabora developers or the communities around them. All of that said, if this video was helpful to you at all, despite its length, we at least got some stuff done. So if this was helpful to you, consider joining the Nerd Club at nerdclub.knots.co. That's a way you can give me $3 a month to help me fund more content, more videos like this. And a huge thank you to all the current Nerd Club members for making this video possible. But for now, that's how to set up Collabora Online for your Nextcloud server. Now I'm going to delete this server and never use it again. I will certainly be setting up a Nextcloud server for Nerd on the Street sometime in 2019 though, and Collabora will be a part of that. For now though, I'm Jacob Kaufman, I'm the Nerd on the Street, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.